I would never go back to being 20, not even for the money. My name is Linda. I am 94, and this is my warning to young people. Listen carefully to what they say next.
Linda is 94. It's not just a number. It means that her life began in a world that almost no one remembers or imagines today. A world where there were no backup options, no quick fixes, no right to be weak. If you didn't move, you fell out. If you stopped, you simply didn't fit in. She doesn't talk about her life as something heroic. For her, it was the norm. To work. To be useful. Not to wait for someone to come and save her. She'd seen people put off life for later. For retirement. For a better moment. For a time when they could stop. And almost always that later never came. Linda lived through decades in which the world was constantly changing, but one thing remained the same: people who lost their meaning disappeared faster than others. They were still alive, walking, talking, but inside, nothing was happening. She called it more simply, people became vegetables. The TV, the armchair, the anticipation of the end. And she always considered it dangerous. For her, work was never a punishment. It was a way to stay alive. Not physically, but internally. Linda did not understand the idea of living only for leisure. She saw people waiting for retirement, and then aging rapidly. As if without duties, without responsibility, without the need to be needed, they simply faded away. Her life was not easy. But it was filled. Not with events for photographs, but with experiences that did not allow her to lose her sense of reality. She was used to doing what made sense to her, not what looked right from the outside. And this, she says, was what kept her on her feet for decades. Linda lived a long life not because she took care of herself, but because she did not allow herself to stop. She did not romanticize old age or fear it. For her, old age is not an age, but a state that people enter much earlier than they think. And often voluntarily. That is why she speaks so calmly about time. For her, years are not the enemy. The enemy is the moment when a person stops being honest with themselves and begins to live as if there is an infinite amount of time ahead. And this is only the beginning of what she realized too early, and too dearly. When Linda was asked about the biggest mistake of her life, she didn't talk for long. She didn't look for dramatic words or try to justify herself. She said one simple thing: she took people's word for it too often. And she did it more times than she should have. She didn't explain the details. She didn't name names. But it was clear that this was not one story or one person. It was a way of life. The habit of seeing people as better than they really were. Giving more than receiving. Trusting where you should have stopped and thought. Linda got married very early. She was 19. In those days, it wasn't considered a mistake. It was considered the norm. Everyone did it. No one asked questions about her readiness, her character, her future. It was customary to start life quickly, without pauses or doubts. But after a few years, that marriage ended. She was about 24 when she was left alone. She never married again. Not because she hated marriage. And not because she had completely lost faith in people. But because she remembered well the price of a mistake made blindly. She knew what a life built on trust that was not justified looked like. And she did not want to pay for it again. She had a daughter. Then her grandchildren appeared. They became a real gift of life for her. But even here Linda did not idealize the family. She knew that love does not cancel responsibility, and closeness does not guarantee honesty. She saw how people covered up their own weakness with words about family values, but in reality they simply avoided talking to themselves. Sometimes she admitted that she was surprised at herself. How after everything she had experienced, she still remained open. How she allowed people to get close. How she did not become cynical. But at the same time she understood, this was the trait that cost her the most. Linda did not regret her life. But she knew one thing for sure: blind trust is not kindness. It is a dangerous illusion. And it always comes with years of payback. Sometimes with loneliness. Sometimes with silence. Sometimes with realization that comes too late. And that was just the first bill that life had given her. Linda grew up in a time when fear was a part of everyday life, not a news story. She was a teenager when World War II was going on. It didn't look like a movie or a big event in a textbook. It looked like empty shelves, restrictions, lists of what was allowed and what was forbidden. Sugar, butter, meat, everything was on cards. Not because anyone wanted to make life difficult, but because there was no other way. She remembered the day the war ended. She remembered not the emotions, but the sound. The whistles. A working day that simply came to an end. No one cried or celebrated like they show in the movies. She later admitted that she didn't even realize what the word "end" meant then. Because war doesn't disappear in an instant. It lives on for a long time in people, in habits, in fears, in the way you look at the world. She saw how generations changed. How more opportunities appeared and at the same time more anxiety. The world was getting faster, louder, but not necessarily safer. She remembered a time when children could walk around the city alone, not afraid of anything. When parents didn't call every 5 minutes. When freedom didn't seem like a risk. Linda didn't deny that the world had become more complicated. But she never believed that fear was something new. There had always been wars, she said. There had always been conflicts. People had always found reasons to be afraid. The only difference was how much attention we paid to it and what we allowed it to do to our lives. She had long worried about things she couldn't control. Politics, decisions, the news. But over the years she had come to understand a simple thing: most of it doesn't change because you're experiencing it. Worrying doesn't give you control. It just takes time. Eventually she stopped living by the news. Not because she became indifferent, but because she learned to protect what really mattered. She did what she could. She voted. She lived. She worked. And she didn't let fear rule her day. The world fell apart many times. But she chose the same thing every time, not to fall apart with it. Linda never spoke of death with fear. She didn't avoid the subject or try to make fun of it. When she said that she probably didn't have much longer to live, there was no tragedy or regret in her voice. It sounded like a simple statement of fact. Calm. Honest. Without emotional display. It was at this moment that it became clear that she looked at life differently than most. She wasn't afraid of the end. She was afraid of something else, living life without noticing how it had passed. She had seen people like that. They had been with her at different times in life. They had waited. They had put it off. They were constantly preparing to start living later. And then suddenly they realized that there was almost no time left. For Linda, time was not an abstraction. It was concrete. It was measured not in years, but in states. You could be young and already tired. You could be old and still involved in life. She didn't believe in the illusion that youth automatically meant energy and old age was the end. According to her observations, everything was the opposite. People appeared much earlier than they aged. She lived a long life not because she protected herself from everything, but because she accepted reality as it was. Without embellishment. Without escape. She didn't hide from difficult thoughts or reassure herself with phrases that everything will be fine. She simply lived day by day, without deceiving herself about what was important and what wasn't. Linda knew that her life was coming to an end. But there was no panic in it. There was clarity. She had lived long enough not to cling to each day with despair. She didn't feel like she had missed something. And that was what set her apart from many others. In this silence, without words or explanations, the main conclusion of her life emerged: death is not scary. A terrible life in which you never dared to be honest with yourself. And when time becomes honest, it leaves no room for excuses. Linda didn't try to lecture. She didn't speak condescendingly or put herself above others. She simply shared what she had seen over her long life. And the main thing she understood was simple and at the same time uncomfortable: most people live their lives, constantly deceiving themselves. They say it's still early. That there's a lot of time ahead. That now is not the right time. They postpone important decisions, real desires, honest conversations. They accept a life that doesn't feel like theirs, and reassure themselves that one day they will change everything. Linda saw how the years passed, and these later never came. She often said that the greatest loss is not failures or mistakes. The greatest loss is the years lived without awareness. When a person lives by inertia, day after day, without asking themselves any questions. When they don't want to face the truth because they are afraid of what they will see. Linda didn't think life should be easy. She didn't believe in the idea of constant comfort. According to her, comfort often dulls. Makes you indifferent. Takes away your sense of reality. She saw how people hid from life behind screens, habits, excuses. How they gradually lost interest in the world, even when they had everything they needed. Her view of life was tough, but honest. She believed that it was important for a person to stay involved. To have a job that makes sense. To be needed. To feel that every day is not in vain. And not because someone will appreciate it, but because otherwise an emptiness appears inside. When Linda was asked what she would tell those who want to live longer and happier, she didn't give a list of advice. She didn't talk about secrets or recipes. She said only one thing: to be honest with yourself. To honestly answer the question of whether you are living the way you want. Whether you are not lying to yourself every day, putting off life for later. Her warning is simple and at the same time tough. Time passes faster than it seems. And sooner or later it puts everyone in front of the mirror. The only question is whether you are ready to look into it now, or wait for the moment when there is almost no time left for answers. If this story made you think for even a minute, then it was not in vain. Subscribe so as not to miss the next stories. And write in the comments. At what age, in your opinion, do people most often start lying to themselves?